Well, welcome back from lunch. Did everyone have a good lunch? Good, good. Well, I have the privilege of introducing our host for the afternoon and the next panel. And I'm not sure how much of an introduction she really needs because I think probably everyone or most everyone in the room knows Shelley Irwin. I got on her LinkedIn page this morning just to pull a couple of comments off because I've known Shelley for a while and I get the privilege of working with her a couple of times a month because I organize guests for a couple of her shows. And if you don't know Shelley's story, you can probably go out and Google it, but did you know she was a physical therapist at one time? Mm-hmm. And then she went into broadcast journalism, where she is today, and she said, following up on true talents and passion, haven't stopped loving the field and getting the most out of the opportunities. But this is what I really like what she said. Her specialties: show host and producer, community participant, and if you know anything about Shelley, you know she's everywhere and involved in everything, and she's always running to a meeting, and then she still gets her exercise in every day. But she's a triathlete, and most of all, I love this part, she's a dog lover and owner. So welcome, Shelley. We appreciate you being here again.
Only Renee would wear green to a green event. There we are. I'm also known for taking pictures of the audience because I'm a Facebook fiend and I want to get your story out. We'll get you later. Hi. Come on. And I own dogs because that's what gets me home. So I live in a dog house. I'm honored to be here, and of course it's not about me, it's about your panelists and the participation that we have over the next hour, and of course your workshops. Congratulations to your keynote for, I understand, giving a great inspirational message as well. So thank you for being here and caring, of course, about the environment. Thank God the meteor did not hit us on this side of the land. Take each day to the max. Let me introduce the panelists, please. Your summary is in your program, but I want to go into a little more of detail. Lisa Rose Starner, glad you're here, herbalist, wildcrafter, urban farmer, and author, plus a wife and mother of two. Lisa Rose Starner knows ultimately the demands of modern life on our health. She's cultivated her herbalism practice as a natural extension of her, is it locavore?
Sure.
Yeah. Locavore and local food advocacy work, of course, in her home city of Grand Rapids, right here in Michigan. Surrounded by the magical lands of Michigan and the powerful water, of course, of our Great Lakes, she offers her teachings on wild plants, foraging, wildcrafting, and medicine, making use bioregional perspective, believing that land holds the secrets of healing for her community and beyond. Her website, herbalist LisaRoseStarner.com. Round of applause for Lisa.
Oh, well, thank you very much. The invitation is his.
Alyssa Hillary will be on the air with me next Tuesday at 10:30. There's our plug, my friend. Executive Director of Local First. She's graced the cover of Grand Rapids Magazine in her past life. Hillary is credited with the growing movement to bring local dollars back into our community through, of course, local purchasing. She will share her insights today about growing a social enterprise, healing our economy in our environment, and empowering entrepreneurs, that's probably most of you in the audience, to fulfill the niches, again, in our local community and in our local economy as well. Localfirst.com for more information. Put your dollars locally. Round of applause to Elisa, please.
Sign up. Remember?
Yep. Mary Brown, glad you're here, a local facilitator and educator. Mary delivers a course at GRCC, helping students emerging out of poverty, of course, improving their lives through 7 core lifestyle choices. Mary is in this process herself and has, over time, been discovering how to reflect her own personal values for a stronger triple bottom line in her lifestyle, including personal wellness, economic and environmental responsibility, and social equity values. Mary's transforming to live the change, if I may. She wishes to see the world and inspiring students and others around her to do the same. You can kind of feel the glow around Mary Brown. Thanks, Mary. Her website, leeax.com. Thanks, Mary. Round of applause. Again, My next guest, Rachel Hood, I'm still in show mode. Our next panelist needs no introduction, and nor do the rest. Executive Director Rachel Hood, WEMIAC. For the last 6 years, Rachel has been working to orient the region's most established environmental organization to 21st century environmentalist issues, while protecting, of course, the business practice and regulatory gains made by by previous generations of local environmental leaders. Rachel leads a team of people working on 2 key strategies for the environment: elevating green infrastructure opportunities to address stormwater management issues, in order, of course, to protect our Great Lakes, and focusing on energy optimization as the first, most affordable step toward energy security in our communities. WEMIAC.org. Thanks for being here and leading this great workshop as well. Rachel Hood, round of applause. Allow me to frame our time together here again. I have some questions, general questions for each as well, and then of course we will open it up to the audience. We will be passing a microphone all around. I know that this is a close environment. We could most probably hear your questions, but do wait until your microphone comes to you. On behalf of Rachel and her team, here are words I've been asked to share. We know that our environment is threatened in many different ways. Finding our path towards sustainability in our lives, our communities, and our globe will require diverse, passionate leaders who are willing to deliver new approaches to conquer our issues and protect our planet. In front of you are the active examples of women leading change for themselves, their families, and for local, regional, national, and international communities. We do hope to learn more about how and why these leaders have been inspired to take action in their lives in our community. We know our personal motivations, of course, are key factors in progress, so let's identify these motivators. Also, what is next? What are the next challenges our community will face in protecting our natural resources? How will our communities be mobilized, that's you and me? And how can we match our motivations with these emerging needs? Buckle up. Rachel Hood, describe your approach to leadership for the environment and what inspired your commitment to your natural resources and community.
Well, I am from the Detroit area, from a urban community, a suburb of Detroit called Royal Oak. And I grew up with a lot of great neighborhood parks, but with a sense of disconnectedness from our natural resources. In Detroit, we're also, like we are here in West Michigan, we're very close to the lakes and to the Detroit River. But those bodies of water aren't as healthy as Lake Michigan is. And on a regular basis, we were unable to really enjoy our lakeshore and our water resources. And this became really present to me as I was coming of age, starting the my high school Students for Environmental Awareness group, working to change over my church's practices at coffee hour from styrofoam to glass, and working with my brother to take inner city kids onto Belle Isle into the river for some sailing experiences. And the disconnect began to really bother me, and the sense of not being in control of these resources that were so dear to me and to our community. And from there, I really began to get interested in urban issues and in community development. And I found that in Detroit at the time, this would have been in the late 90s, there really wasn't a place for me to be able to deliver those passions. So I hightailed it to the west side of the state and discovered this place with a rich philanthropic network, a rich community, an amazing amount of natural resources that were, even though we were living in an urban environment, we could step out of our door and in 20 minutes or half an hour be in the midst of great natural beauty. And so my career has really been built around introducing nature back into urban communities to help heal those places, and more importantly, to help heal the people in urban communities so that we can all work together to then heal the planet. And I, like Roxana, started my work in community organizing, not in unions, but on the community development side. So my approach to leadership has always been facilitative, more about trying to look for leaders in communities and empower them. And that's why this event is so important to me and is quickly becoming my favorite WEMIAC event. Don't tell anybody. Because I really feel that we all have a power inside of us to heal our own lives and to make deeper connections, to reconnect nature and our built environments.
Don't tell anybody, and there's a camera in your face.
Oh,
that
right,
doesn't happen. Mary Brown, your approach to leadership, please. What's your inspiration?
I'm a little parched, so I'm going to do a Marco Rubio. I was going to grab it. Oh. Well, first of all, being politically incorrect is probably the biggest asset I have now.
Let me bring this up to you, too, please.
Oh,
Okay, then.
You break it, you buy it.
You buy it. There you are.
My approach is from the personal nature, and that's why I'm here to present in the workshop around that. I think that anything that has to be done around the environment or any sort of systemic change, you also have to personalize it. And so talking earlier today at a sidebar, we were going back to that old adage of the political becomes personal, the personal becomes political, right? And everybody's familiar with that. And I think for a lot of people who are in poverty or of color, that's how that change happens. So I come to the work from a very personal nature, from family background that brought me here to understand who I am and my connection with the environment and connection with community. So that personal also connects with other people. I'm very big system thinker. In fact, my scholarship has been and will be at the PhD level around complex adaptive systems. And so I believe that when we understand how systems work and we understand how they replicate themselves, whether those replications are not as palatable or good, right? Or if they are good, as in you saw in the videos earlier today, how it's being worked from a systemic level to create that change. So that's one way, or how I've come to the work. The second thing I look at is how do we look at the unusual suspects? And we often bring in people into the fold that seem like these are the people who should be doing this, right? But there are unusual suspects that are out there who need to be connected to this work, and how do we work on that? And then I think thirdly, my interest around design, architecture, landscape, that sort of thing also brought me to this work as well. On the side, I'm a gardener. I got that from my mom. And so that fascinates me, the connection from as an individual to the environment, and also for me how large structures can connect with the environment, not just from the standpoint of having open windows and open spaces, but also how do they dissolve back into the environment safely. So those sort of things bring me to the work.
Thank you.
I promise I won't break it.
If you do, I won't hold it against you. Wow, what an honor to be up here with all of you. I love hearing your stories, and I loved hearing Roxana's story earlier today. I think when Roxana was talking about the intersection between environmental and economic, that really, really resonates with me. And from a very early age, I was interested in social justice issues, and would read all kinds of things about people in communities, and would go volunteer in parts of my community and see where people lived, and just this real inequity. And at the same time, I've always loved to be outdoors. I've loved to be in nature, and I found that that is such a fulfilling place for me that can make me whole. And so I think my work with Local First has really been about that connection between environment and economic, and often much of what we do is focused on the economics, but that's very intentional. Because that's a common ground. If the economics aren't there, if people aren't employed, if a business can't make money, if you can't work on some of those other issues. And so I think my work has been about helping people find that common ground, and that's often in the economy, and that tips over into environmental justice and social justice as well.
Lisa Rose.
Well, I think from a leadership perspective, I'm my own free agent, and I think that, like what Mary Brown had said, I love being able to help get people outside, and it's highly personal. So no matter, I don't speak on behalf of an organization, so what you see, it's me, and much to my husband's dismay sometimes. And I think that I've worked in a variety of capacities in the environment, primarily in local food. People know me in that space. But over the past several years, through my own health journey and through my own journey being a woman, being a professional woman, an educated professional woman, which we should all recognize is a point of privilege, really struggled with how am I going to do my work in a way that's sustainable, not just sustainable but around the resources of the life I'm living, but that's sustainable to my own personal health resources. And for me, that came to reconnecting with a place. So in the environmental movement, if, as Mary Brown had said, making it personal, we can't fight for something if we don't have a visceral connection to it. So if I'm working with kids in the city growing gardens and having them taste kale, and after they tell me, Miss Rose, that's nasty. Fine, it's nasty. And we start to talk about water. And we start to have these conversations, and well, what do you mean about water? I've never been to Lake Michigan. How are we going to make Rachel Hood's work relevant to our children about the Great Lakes and protecting the Great Lakes? I'm a child of the Great Lakes. I grew up 5 minutes from Hoffmaster. Like that is my land when I think about where I'm from. How do I help create little fighters unless they have a connection to that place? Okay, so for me, it really came my own healing, and I'm not healed. I got a whole bag of issues. We all have a whole bag of issues. We're human, and that's beautiful. But there's something that comes, and if you've had that experience, getting outside, and not everybody likes to be outside, so you have to wear wool socks, smart wool. Not everybody likes to get outside. Itchy. I can't handle wool. Whatever it takes to get outside and really have that connection to yourself and to a larger purpose. A sense of wonder, that phrase is cliche, but it really, once you know it and feel it, and I can see it. It's possible wherever you're at in life, and especially in our urban communities, and especially around poverty, whether it's rural or urban poverty. Having that connection at the end of the day, health and being vibrant. We want to be vital. We want to be vibrant. We want to get our energy from the world around us, okay? And having that sense of place, that connection, that heartfelt spirit connection. I will not sing Kumbaya up here. But having that heartfelt spirit connection creates environmentalists. It's not just a heady academic it's not heady and academic, though I can be a heady and academic. person, it has to be felt. And unless you feel it, unless you know what the smell of the lake is, unless you really know what it feels like to paddle down in a canoe down the river, or walk through a field, or go through the crunchy leaves, like once you know it and once it's a part of your being, or even in the middle of the city, I can get really excited about nature in the city. People are like, there's nothing in the city. I'm like, dude, do you not see the purslane? Or we could eat that, we could make pine tip tea out of that, white pine over there. It's everywhere.
Going on a walk with you.
It's everywhere, and that's the one thing about nature, is that it is everywhere, no matter how much we muck it up. So, which we are doing.
Next year, make that a workshop, follow-up workshop. Hang on.
I'm not, let's muck it up less.
We'll hear more from you.
Yeah.
Mary Brown, what aspiration for West Michigan's environment are you excited about? What is next?
Well, this is my first conference, so I'm excited about this and to see the passion around this work. So the work that you all do, and hearing you now, I've known Lisa forever, and so I can imagine, you can't imagine going on a walk with her. She probably, I'm like, I'm not eating that.
I'm not dead yet.
Yeah, that's true. We still got time. So that work is, the work that you all do it gives me hope, right? To see that there are ways that people can connect to that work. That's why I'm hopeful. The people who are not connecting to that work now. And I look around the room, and visibly, there's not a lot of people of color. So, and so you have to think about that. Why? And I know we will probably have that in the discussion point. So I'm excited about that. I also look at problems as opportunities. Studying with Dr. Langford years ago in education, he coined them as problemtunities. And I think that's very important, to look at problems as opportunities. And this whole, from 2008, the market crash, if you really looked at it as it's a huge and has been a huge opportunity to do things differently. So it gives me hope that even small businesses are looking at how do we repurpose these large infrastructures that are out there. Again, getting into the architectural kind of thing, right? How do we repurpose these old factories and make them different? Or if we tear them down, what do we do with that space, right? That's an opportunity. Although it's sad, some people say it's sad to see the industry leave, but look at what's happened in Detroit, right? That is a problem, that is an opportunity. So those things make me hopeful to see if people can connect to what the problem is and how do we flip that into an opportunity to make some very real changes in our world. So I'm hopeful and excited about that.
Nice. Rachel? Yeah, thank you.
I love Mary's sentiment, and I think that what is next for us is really capturing the opportunities. Lately, I've been doing a lot of research around green jobs in Michigan, inspired by the work of Roxana and her team at Lane. And I think we have made a fatal mistake in Michigan of, first of all, taking for granted an industry that powered, millions of families and generations of families, and forgetting to diversify our economy. And then in 2008, when the market crashed, green jobs were really sexy for a couple of years until the bailout. And then the auto industry took for granted the bailout. And in the last couple of years, green jobs have gotten beaten up, and there was a terrible story out of Holland yesterday about green jobs and ARA investments and whether or not our government should be investing in our new economy. And And so today we have, as a group of people, people committed to the triple bottom line, we have to reframe the green jobs dialogue for the state of Michigan and redefine it so that it's not about wasted government dollars, and it's not about an industry that isn't growing fast enough, but instead it's about the slow, hard work that we have to value every small step, every small win along the way in order to rebuild a diverse economy that is good for all people. And so our challenges here in Michigan, and West Michigan is not alone, are about really owning that green jobs story, about using green jobs as a tool to engage people who are in crises that divert their capacity to really work on what a lot of people consider to be heady academic environmental issues, and to bring all of that opportunity here and make it grow. I also think that we have an enormous opportunity to connect across our watershed. The Lower Grand River watershed and the Grand River as a whole is one of the largest watersheds in Michigan, one of the most powerful and longest rivers, and that contiguous river touches lots of different communities. Wendy, is it 18 different communities? Counties, 18 different counties in the watershed. Thank you, Wendy. And this is our red thread. We know the Chinese proverb that across generations, across time, people are connected by an invisible red thread. Has anybody heard that before? Well, the Grand River is our blue thread. Let's use it as a tool to bring people together to understand the challenges that our watersheds face. And then finally is new energy. All of these communities need to be powered in ways that keep us whole, that don't make us sick, that keep our pocketbooks full, and that create new jobs. So those are the three things that I really see as critical moving forward.
Melissa, what makes you excited?
There are two main things that I think of that make me excited right now. One is that, well, first of all, we live in a really fast-paced world, right? Where we're thinking about all kinds of things. We're jumping between email and our iPhones and being here and being present and talking to people. But in all of that, there's this desire for community, this desire to be part of a community and for relationship and to be in relationship. And with that, I think we're seeing a shift towards place, both locally and nationally, and a shift towards maybe a commitment to place and to businesses within that place and relationships within that place. And to me, that does nothing but good things for the environmental movement, because when you're in a place, you care about it. Right? So as we're nationally seeing a shift towards supporting locally owned businesses, we're seeing that here as well. And to me, that's good because there's transparency there. When there's something of a scale where you can know the ownership and you can have a relationship with them or have a relationship with that favorite coffee shop or restaurant or whatever, you notice things about it, and through that relationship, there's transparency. And that's the second thing that I'm really excited about. I see in the next couple of years lots more opportunities for transparency, both through those little iPhones and email and technology, but also through all kinds of evaluation tools that will start to help us better measure our impacts, not just in large businesses and institutions, but in smaller organizations as well. And I really think that as people are desiring to be part of that community and to have those relationships, they want to be good stewards of their place. They want to be good stewards of their community. But sometimes we need to know where we're at. We have to be able to benchmark where we're at to be able to grow and to be able to connect.
Ms. Rose, your final comment.
For me, I think I'm just most excited that people are starting to wake up. That we're not taking things, writ large, and we're asking questions. And you know, whether that's from the food that's on your plate to where does my electricity come from to what's the impact of XYZ car that I drive. Though those questions could drive us all crazy, and we may turn shopping at the grocery store into an hour-and-a-half endeavor. You'd want to medicate after those kinds of experiences. When I moved back from the Bay Area in 2001 to Grand Rapids, I was living out in Napa, working in the Napa Valley in the wine industry, where you know, I really opened my eyes while I grew up in West Michigan, where there's a lot of migrant labor, lots of fruit bushes, you know, ag country. Moving away to Napa really opened my eyes to a lot of the bigger issues in food. I started volunteering at a program called the Edible Schoolyard in Berkeley. And that was a place where, you know, I got to work alongside kids, and we would grow food and then cook it in like a kitchen classroom, which was super fun. Kids loved it, 6th grade, hour and a half. You know, it was like playtime, and we got to eat. And the kids didn't even know they were learning things at the same time. It was pretty sweet. When I got back here to do that similar work, because I couldn't afford California, and I moved back to Grand Rapids, and I wanted to work with kids in the soil, connecting them, because I truly felt like this is one, it's a fantastic way to learn. For those of us that aren't a traditional book learner, getting your hands in the dirt outside is a fantastic way for a non-traditional learner. But you're also connecting with the land, and you know, in this time of a food systems crisis, I came back really hell-bent, frankly, to teach kids where their food comes from, thinking that this is going to change their lives. And when I moved into this town, people were like, oh my gosh, you want to garden with kids? That's so nice. And I was just like, I wanted to shake people and say, this is not a nice gardening club activity. I love gardening. I think it's a great activity. This is going to save our kids' life. Our kids are not going to live as long because of what we're eating. Today, people care, and people are asking questions. And people, frankly, are angry. And, you know, I get pretty emotional. I've got 2 kids myself. Mom, you are the only person in West Michigan that makes us eat kale. Probably. You'll be fine. Mothers are asking, fathers are asking. People are trying to really put their arms around who owns our food system. What is happening with the CAFOs? What is happening with that ag runoff that's going into what Rachel calls the blue thread, into our water systems, that's being dumped out at the end of the Grand River and poisoning our Lake Michigan? You know, for me, it's important. I do believe in knowing your farmer, even if they're farming conventionally. Those people are the gatekeepers to caring for that land. And making sure that they feel, 1, we hold them accountable, and 2, that they have to take care of the land because that's the land that feeds us and connects us and makes us well. Finally, there are enough people actually caring. And it's marked the difference in 12 years, because I couldn't go out and say, let's go into the woods, I'm going to teach you about wild edibles, not even about kale. You know, now I get the weird looks about ditch weeds. You know, but now people are trying to figure out what's next. How can I learn more to take care of myself and my family? And we're waking up.
You bet. We're glad you came back, but we're glad you did not shake anyone, because that could land you in prison. Let's get right into that. Mary, you alluded to this. Let's talk about it. Question for each of you, and then let's open it up to you. Mary, what should we know about culturally appropriate approaches to sustainability and environment when engaging minority communities, please?
I'd like to first say that is such a loaded question, and I, you know, I understand where the question comes from. So let me kind of get into the complexity of that. As a minority, I try very hard not to speak for minorities, because there's a level of individuality. Okay, With that said, there's also some things that are indicative of cultural, right, and systemic things that happen. So if we go and we look at the problem, for, perhaps of look at African Americans or people of African descent, particularly in the United States, and the particularly African Americans in that experience, Reconstruction even before, right? And you look at the fact that you had a people that naturally came from cultivating the land in Africa, right? So that was a natural thing to do. And then you're uprooted from that and brought somewhere else to cultivate someone else's land. And your skills and talents are used to do that. You know, it was noticed, oh, Africans are good at cultivating land, so that's why we want them here, right? And it's then you have a situation where you can't own that land. So you're free, but you can't own it, right? And so there are a lot of people who are historians and scholars that can get deeper into this, even though I'm a polymath and I look at various different subjects and the intersection of that. I will say that that has a profound effect on how people who are African American will look at their role in the community and whether or not they should have a vested interest in that. And so I don't believe in saying that you need to hold on to the past as an excuse, but the past does inform the present. And there's an ethics and memory of that we have to really come to ownership with. So with all that said, I think it goes back to why would anyone want to be a part of the environmental movement? Why would anyone want to save waterways and infrastructure and make sure everything is sustainable? Why would you do that, right? And if you juxtapose poverty, the whole social economic threat, and you look at even poor whites, are they any more involved than other groups, right? And so it's like I have to, again, going back to personal ownership, I have to find a reason why. And when I go to the doctor and giving you an example, if I'm a mother, I have no children, but I can understand this sentiment. If I take my child to the doctor because my child cannot breathe and I'm told, you know what, there are some things in your particular neighborhood that could be the culprit of this. And I start to investigate, and there's maybe environmental, maybe it's even I live in poverty where there's cockroaches, because we found out, through research that impacts asthma. But maybe it's environmental. And then I start to do more research on that. And then I look at the ways that I have to kind of navigate this system to keep my child healthy. And it becomes very personal, and I get annoyed and upset. And then from that, the personal becomes political. Then I start to see people around me having the same issue. And I think that's how a lot of communities of poverty, of color, get involved in that, because they're disproportionately impacted. And so part of the work that has to be done is awareness, right? Awareness to help people understand the personal connection. Also going into the communities not as rescuers and saviors as we have historically done, and even and that not only is from a predominant white culture, but also people who have more education. When I work with people who are in poverty, I have to also pull myself back. Just like Lisa, you talked about being educated, right? And make sure that what I'm trying to share with them is accessible. And accessible not just from me, but also from the wider classroom. I try to create a learning community so that everyone is sharing that. So the work that we have to do is having to build up from a grassroots that knowledge and saying to that person or persons, how do we help you? What support do we give to you for you to move this forward? Not how do you come to our organization and have it happen. And I think that's one of the flaws that we're running into.
Thanks. Ms. Hillary, you've been working with local economy leaders from cities around the region, around the country. That's good. What are you importing from these leaders about community building?
That's a big question. I think all kinds of thousands of little things. But a lot of what Mary just said really resonates with me. One of my good friends, Kim, who's a leader in the local economy movement in Newark, New Jersey, has shared shared some similar stories of experience in bringing her community along, as Mary just mentioned. And I think that what's really key is, I think the greatest lesson I brought back is that it's all about relationships, and it's all helping people build relationships and understand their relationships and understand what's going on in their lives and make that personal connection, and then helping them see how they can have a role in fixing that problem or creating that change and making it a small instrumental goal that they can accomplish and that perhaps a group of people together can accomplish, and really figuring out how to lead by being more of the host and the facilitator and coming at it from a very humble perspective. And that's how I've seen the most change happen around the country in terms of environmental change and economic change.
Awesome. Lisa Rose, you recently traveled to Nicaragua to learn more about homeopathic medicine in these, of course, third world settings. What can this country teach us here?
For about the past 5 years, well, longer than that, I've always had a strong interest around how people, land, how we've worked with the land to sustain us, whether food, medicine, fiber, shelter, and ethnobotany goes hand in hand with that. And the past 5 years, I've traveled to Brazil and several places in Mexico, the Yucatan particularly, and then this last fall, I went and spent 3 weeks with Natural Doctors International in Nicaragua. And Nicaragua, if you don't know, is the second poorest country in Latin America next to Haiti. A little political context. In the 80s, gosh, I think half of us are old enough to remember the 80s, the other half I don't think are. First of all, we're terrible in knowing our geography, so Nicaragua is, in fact, in Latin America. And we funded the Contra War, the U.S. government. The Ollie North trials, was on TV every night at my dinner time. So at the current time in the 80s, the Sandinistas were in power, and good, bad, or otherwise, they had a really strong political value of education and clinical health care for their country. 1985, we imposed an embargo on Nicaragua, basically creating huge food and drug shortages. So at the time, the country, which already has a long history of corruption and broken healthcare infrastructure, among other problems, basically said, well, they didn't have anything. So they basically said, okay, we're going to reinvest in a couple of foundations and put forward an effort to return back to some of the natural, traditional ways of medicines and clinic work. And they had founded a couple of institutions, which to this day, over the past 30 years, they've trained about 100,000 community health workers throughout Nicaragua. That really is not a lot, but community health workers that have a place-based connection, helping people connect with nutritional information, with home remedies, returning to basic gardening, subsistence gardens. When I arrived down there, the long and the short of it, we took about $20,000 worth of herbal remedies to work with Natural Doctors International, and it's an international NGO that takes naturopaths, MDs, and herbalists like myself to the clinic and a couple of other clinics within Nicaragua. Mary had made the comment of this arriving to help. And Nicaragua is a country that has lots of church-related brigades. This was not a religious mission trip at all. However, being the white group going down to a country where women or these communities are making less than $2 a day, definitely a fascinating, if you have an opportunity to travel, if you're interested in healthcare, you can travel beyond the United States. Basically found myself in an ethnobotany world where this state is self-reliant with returning to some of their more traditional remedies. And in the current time in the United States where we have such explosive healthcare costs, people aren't going to the doctor because they don't have money. And, as an extension of my food work, and having 2 children myself, we need to reconnect with the natural, I'm not against conventional medicine at all. In fact, I tore my ACL last winter and I was super happy that my surgeon had really great hands and could hack me open and tie me up, and they gave me some Norco afterward because, oh my gosh, it's like knee surgery. Great PT. There's a role for conventional medicine, and I'm really grateful that we in Grand Rapids have some of the resources we do. But the fact is that it's $168 for me to go to my primary care physician. And if I've got a cold or flu, and it's a basic cold and flu, and I'm a relatively healthy adult, and there are seemingly no problems, that would be $168 throwing out the window because my doctor is going to send me home and say, make some soup, have some fluids, keep an eye on dehydration, and call me in 7 to 10 days if your case gets any worse. And we've lost some of those really basic skills. And as women, as primary care providers in our own home, we don't know how to take care of any of those situations anymore. And so in some ways, we have a lot to learn from the second poorest country in the United States, where they are elevating natural medicines and placing a value around natural medicines, having doctors integrate with the herbalists and the traditional herbalists that are the keepers of this plant knowledge, integrating it in a way that in 20 years, I would love for the United States to have plant-based medicines. This happens in Europe. There is a value of natural medicines integrated into a more clinical setting that is healthier for the planet in the end. Pharmaceuticals right now, production, create a ton of environmental toxins.
They also find their way into the watershed through our bodies.
Yes, and then this is the next thing. As we look at the health of the waterways, all of those pharmas are ending up in our water. So how do we, I don't have an answer for this right now, but I just know that when it comes to personal action, how do I know? It's all about learning what your options are and education and meeting people where they're at and trying to have honest conversations. I don't have all the answers. But how am I trying to muddle through some of these more complex questions around whether it's vaccines or do I buy the organic chicken, and why or why not, or where do I try to stretch if I frequently work with lots of people on limited incomes. In fact, we all have limited incomes when it comes down to it. How do we make the choices that are best for all of us and meet people where they're at? So, being in Nicaragua, I couldn't, diabetes. There are some limitations around what people have access to. And so we have to frame this environmental issue in a way that Mary Brown had used the word accessible. It cannot be an elitist movement. It cannot be inaccessible. And this is really, really, really important, because if we're trying to tell somebody to go buy all of organic food and this and that, and they're on food stamps, we need to make sure that they know about the resources available through benefits through the state, but then also make sure it's relevant, because at the end of the day, if that information is not relevant, it doesn't help anybody. So,
Lisa Rose Starner for president.
No way.
Rachel, a final question to you, if I can have a fairly brief answer, because we want to take a couple questions. What does the region need to do next? We seem to be on a roll. How can the region step up?
We are more and more frequently, as a result of leaders in this room, being nationally recognized for our work around sustainability. But this is a journey, and we are not done. We need to address our energy portfolio and energy management. We have 40 years of housing that is victimizing people because we built really bad homes for the last 40 years. And those homes are energy sieves. Those are dollars going out of our communities, and they're also particulates that are going into the air that are creating cardiovascular health issues, respiratory health issues, and those issues are ultimately locking people in this community and communities across the country in chronic disease and crisis, economic and social crisis. And we also have to protect our water. 20% of the world's freshwater resource is here in the Great Lakes. I always get choked up about this. This is our vast inheritance, and it is our three major economic drivers. Agriculture, tourism, and manufacturing are all dependent on freshwater resources. We have to find ways to, again, like our auto industry legacy and taking for granted all those jobs. We have this rich wealth of water, and we take it for granted. And we can't do that anymore. Drought is entering the Great Lakes Basin. Groundwater is disappearing as close to home as Ottawa County, where brackish water is coming up in farmers' wells. It means salt water from way below down the earth, into the earth. These are things that we have to get motivated around, organized around, and deliver solutions for future generations.
Including your own two small ones.
They're super cute, and they really should be able to play on their beaches, because that's why we are here. And I think everyone in this room who is blessed to be in West Michigan, I hope you have all had an opportunity to connect deeply to your lakes, because that is our place. We've got to listen to those lakes.
Who has a question? Who has a question? Sounds like I'm ready to start an auction here. It's old. Question. Yes. He's a good interview, by the way. Come on now, meet her in the middle for time purposes. Thanks, Brendan.
Hi, I really enjoy the conversation and have enjoyed watching the progress kind of over the years and all the momentum that's building. And from time to time, I get frustrated in seeing the potential of all this momentum being reversed by the signage of a new bill or any given bill. Right now, for instance, Senate Bill 78 is going through our state, which could remove biodiversity from the responsibility of the DEQ. And I'm just wondering, from your perspective, how frustrating is it, or how do you deal with the setbacks from politicians potentially reversing in a very short period of time what has been developed over a long period of time?
That's you.
We were at dinner last night with Roxana, and she talked about the founders of Lane looking at the long game, and that's what I do. This is a moment. It is a brief moment in our state's history, one that we can organize around, one that I hope will get people like yourselves infuriated enough that you show up in the halls of our state legislature and you elect more women, more people of color to represent real voices in our communities. We are, in my opinion, and I'll say this on TV, Our legislature is cutting off Michigan's nose despite its face. We are failing ourselves, and we're failing our children. And in 2 years, that will change. And it will change because you and I got out the vote. And because you and I decided to be candidates for office and made a commitment to represent the people in your community and the voices in your community. And Senate Bill 78, we will work, Nick will work tirelessly to fight that. Many others in the room, Erica, I see you. Shirley Callio is great at this work. But if it does pass, it'll just be a moment. And in 2 years, when we have a more responsible legislature, we'll come back at it and we'll fix it. We've got a long list of things we have to fix already. We'll just add it to the list.
Any other response? Any other questions? Please. Microphone, yep.
Hi. So a lot of times when at events like this or whenever we're surrounded with like-minded people, it's really fantastic because you get to hear personal stories of how everybody entered into whatever kind of moment of getting religion that they had. And yet sometimes I fear that alienates populations because they go, oh, I don't have a history or a background. I mean, I am a man. It's true. And so when you first are discovering, and I say this because of my own kind of journey with understanding feminism, you have your first conversation with someone and you find out they're really angry at you for being the person that you are, which was valid, by the way. How do we foster, in context of this kind of infuriation and almost righteous indignation, if I can call it, empathy for the person on the other side who doesn't get it? Because I feel like that's a population we want here in the room. We don't want them on the outside of the room. I don't have the answer, so I would love to hear your responses.
Well, I think for me, the food conversation, one, we all eat, okay, and it's a conversation, not to take away from the importance of water or some of these other issues, but food is probably the next biggest, if not already, environmental issue of our time. And when you start to talk about, Levi, what you're saying, some people just haven't really thought about much of what they're eating. And, food is very personal, and food is what we choose to eat has sometimes religious reasons, family reasons. I love my mother's, probably non-dolphin safe tuna fish casserole from 1983. There's no sense behind that, right? And I guess what I've learned personally is that, I'm a pretty fired up person. I am a Leo. I do come across really, that makes sense, really intense. And I've worked with Rachel, I've pissed Rachel off. We've gone months without talking before. And I mean, just, it is more of a longer
It's
game.
been reversed as well.
It's whatever. It's part of it's recognizing who we all are and that there's a value of all of us at the table. So, and meeting people where they're at. And it is more of a compassionate conversation because for me, I've just spent all of my life in food and I think, oh my gosh, how can you not think about this? But then it's just well, of course, and now it's sort of, I'm postmodern on the food issue. And that if you brought me a bologna sandwich, I'd just say thank you and I'd eat it and be glad that I didn't have to cook. I see that was a joke. I'd still eat it. But in all seriousness, there does have to be the thoughtfulness of saying, okay, what is the other person's experience? Have they had these aha moments or not? Or how, in my work, sitting down in a one-on-one environment is usually the easiest and safest, and to hear somebody else's story and to ask them where they're at. And, if they're coming to me to learn how to make tea and they say all they have is a microwave, I'm not going to jump all over them with the issues of microwaves. There might be issues of microwaves, but in that moment, that's just not even the important thing. Because we do want a human connection at the end of the day, right? I would like to think so. And if I don't feel like I'm part of anything, I'll check out.
Let's all hold hands and sing Kumbaya.
Oh, I know.
Didn't you say that? We're out of time unless there's one more burning question. I'm sure there'll be time for that. One more, please.
I noticed that all of you, excuse me, in your introductions, talked about a sort of a personal experience with nature that drew you to this kind of work. My question is, and I think that's valid and really important, I wonder how do we foster that more? Can we do a better job of starting there, developing that relationship with nature to spur people on to then love and care for it in a more substantial way?
Mary, let's start with Mary, please.
You know, there's a couple things, and I think it will go back to the previous question and discussion here. I look at, in the classroom, I look at always meeting the students where they're at. And I'll just give you a quick experience. I had a student that I do a lot of where I immerse students in simulations and discussions and that sort of thing. And we did a case study discussion as a classroom, and I set them up in communities. And certain communities had passions about different things, right? And one community in particular had passion about animals. And regardless of how they felt, they had to relay that passion because they were part of that community. So they weren't sorted out according to what their passions were, right? And so I work really hard to have students look at the other perspective and have them argue that. So you cannot care about animals, but for this simulation, you have to go and research or whatever you need to do, and you have to develop caring about animals. And I had a student that flat out said, look, I don't know, and she was a person of color. I feel that, and we had in their community, Michael Vick moved in, right? And, you know, right? It connected them to something very real. And she said, I don't have a problem with him being in this community because I think we care too much about animals and not humans, right? Mm-hmm. And I said, well, okay, in your community, explore that. Have dialogue. And, you know, her group was really like, oh, my God, we got to deal with this person, right? But they worked through it, and at the end of the program or end of class, of course, students have to do a presentation of what they learned and what changed them. And she had some really strong, radical, I would see as radical. I'm putting a value statement on it, so I have to be careful. But it was really sort of, she was following some guru, and she was really into this. And her end of her presentation, she said, and the one thing that I learned, I changed my mind about how we connect ourselves to animals and people and what that means systemically. Because I really work at complex systems, right? And I said, well, tell me more about that. And she said, if I can't trust you to take care of the most vulnerable person or thing in the community, how can I trust you to take care of me? And so kind of answering what you are trying to say and what you're asking is that sometimes you have to go to where people are at. A lot of times you got to go where people are at and allow them to make that connection. You can't force that. And I think it comes along. It comes along when someone has that experience, and it just kind of comes along.
Mm-hmm. If I may add to that, kind of moving from the personal to the community level, statewide level, we have opportunities to reintroduce place into our curriculums, and to, you know, the whole No Child Left Inside movement, the idea that we have to integrate environmental education, place-based education, whether it is through food, through water experiences, through looking at economic systems. If we are able to do that in our classrooms, we will be better as a society over time. we do that at WEMIAC through our Teach for the Watershed program, which is a place-based program that trains teachers to get kids into their watersheds. And I think we just need more of that. GVSU has a great program, Groundswell, which is working on teacher education for the environment as well. And I'm sure that there are more examples of that I'm not mentioning. But we do, as we talk about education reform, we can't forget about place and about everything that is learned by exploring nature and natural systems.
Great. Round of applause for your 4 leaders, please. Rachel, what is our action item for the workshop purposes, please?
Well, we have an exciting afternoon in store for you. There are 4 different workshops that are led as kind of an outgrowth of this panel. Mary Brown is going to be working on personal planning, and I'm really excited to spend an hour with myself and with Mary to put together the next steps in my own journey. I hope that you'll spend time doing that as well. Alyssa's team is going to do an exercise on our local economy, helping us to identify gaps in our local economy and think about entrepreneurial activities that perhaps could fuel some businesses that become yours and become a great way that this event impacts our community. Lisa is here for us for one session. She has some personal items to attend to later this afternoon, but if you're interested in learning more about the connection between wellness and our native ecosystems, Lisa is going to be holding one session right away immediately following this. And our team at WEMIAC is going to be engaging a few local activists who are working on horizontal hydraulic fracking. And we'll have a discussion about how our communities can begin to mobilize to address that issue and educate folks about fracking and its impact on our natural resources. Those are happening in the classrooms that are immediately behind us on either side of this kind of corridor, if you will. I believe Lisa's class is on this side, as well as Local Firsts, and then the fracking workshop is on this side, along with Mary's personal planning.
Great. Go get them, audience. You are charged to spread the word to one new person today. Thanks.
Sweet.
Awesome.
Thank you, dear.
Thank you.
Picture.